Hello, everybody. We're going to give a couple minutes just to let everybody filter in, and then we will start the webinar. While people are filtering in, can anybody just raise their hand if they can hear me? Thank you. All right, we'll get started. Today's webinar is on how to increase collection call productivity. And we have 4 bonus call scripts at the end for all of you. A little bit about us before we get started. We're Anytime Collect. We're an automated accounts receivable software, and we've been around since 2008. So we've had a lot of opportunity to really grow our product, get to know customers and what people need in accounts receivable software and automation. So we have a bunch of different use cases, a bunch of different integrations, and we've also had the opportunity to really get to know some of these tips and tricks that will help you in your everyday collections process, things that we've gathered in the industry, gathered from our customers, and gathered even in our own accounts receivable processes. So for the agenda today, we have how to be more effective on your collection calls. We're going to go over how to increase transparency on your collection calls throughout your organization, and then we'll go through those collection call scripts. So how to be more effective on your collection calls. The first thing that we recommend is getting organized. So have something available to write things down and have it written down before you call. Have a goal in mind. You know, what are you trying to get out of this call? Are you trying to get them to make a payment? Are you trying to figure out why they haven't made a payment? Are you just doing a reminder? Make sure that you know why you're calling and you have that written down. You have that goal in mind before you make that collection call. Have your customer information available. So this might include previous payments, notes from previous conversations. How much overdue is the customer? Everything about the customer needs to be available to you right away, because inevitably the customer will start asking these questions. So when you have that information available right away, instead of having to take time to look it up, then you and your customer are able to get to the bottom of that goal that you had in mind from the beginning of the call much more quickly, and then you can call all the other customers that you need to call, because we know that list is endless. And finally, this might sound a little weird, but have a smile on your face. So your customers can tell what type of mood you're in, and that will affect how much you're able to collect, how willing they are to work with you and to get that payment to you on time. So if you have a smile on your face, usually those physical characteristics will carry over into your mood and into how you're talking to your customers, which will result in getting paid faster. Inform your customer. So I'm sure you all know this, but sometimes we do need to remind ourselves that we aren't the only vendor to our customer. We're not the only person that our customers are dealing with. So you need to make sure that the invoice number is available, that the invoice amount is available, and that you have the due date all in front of you, because you'll probably need to remind them of everything. They have a big stack of invoices that they're trying to pay. If you're calling them out of the blue, they weren't expecting your phone call, they probably don't have this information in front of them. So getting them on the same page as you quickly can help you guys get down to business faster. And then stop and listen. Lend your customers an ear. So we actually have a story from our own organization around this topic. And our owner tells it all the time that one of the best collectors that we ever had She walked into her office one day and just kind of took a second to listen to the conversation that she was having with one of our customers. And they were joking and laughing, and she was asking her about the customer's children, and they were just having a really great conversation. And when she got off the phone, our owner asked her, you know, who was that? You know, what kind of conversation were you having? And the collector replied back to her, you know, you just gotta kill them with kindness. So and this was one of the best collectors we have ever had. We barely had any late accounts when she was working for us. And so sort of the moral of the story is if you stop and listen and you get to know the customers and you're able to really relate to them and kind of get them on your side, you're more likely to collect from them on time, all the time. Because at the end of the day, the people that are paying these invoices, they're humans. And they're going to pay the invoices to the people that they like best first, to the companies that they like best first. And so if you take that, you know, extra 30 seconds, extra minute to ask them how they're doing, ask them how, you know, their kids are, how everything's going, you might find that a lot of these customers will start paying you more quickly. It's really about customer service. So now we're going to talk about how to increase your transparency on your collection calls throughout the organization. So before we get into it, I just want to take a second to talk about why you do want to increase your transparency and why this is important. It happens all the time in organizations. A collector might leave the company, they might go on vacation, they get sick, but that doesn't mean that your collections process, you know, stops and takes a stall, as you all know. You have to keep collecting. So when you have transparency and you can see the things that that collector was working on and that and where they were at and what kind of notes they were able to take, then that collections process doesn't stop and it doesn't go back to the beginning to try and figure out how to collect from these customers. So by having transparency and increasing that transparency, then you know where all collectors are at, you know where their customers are at and where they are in the collections process. So one way that you can do this is just simply taking notes. And you can create a document inside of your organization that every collector needs to fill out on each collections call in order to make sure that they're collecting all the information needed for a follow-up call in case they are out of the office. Things like promises to pay. If a customer promises to pay by a certain date, make sure that that is noted somewhere that everybody can see. Maybe you have a internal document sharing service, something like a SharePoint, where you can keep these documents for each account to promise to pay. Another option for this, and if you don't want to have hundreds of documents existing in SharePoint or in the cloud, you can use a tool like Anytime Collect, an automated accounts receivable software, where on each account there's simply a button that you press for promises to pay. You put in the date that that promise to pay was supposed to take place, and if that promise to pay is not followed through on, then all of your collectors are alerted, or the head of accounts receivable will be alerted. So then that transparency is automatically there. Whether you've actually logged into the collector's account or not, you're just going to get an email automatically that tells you there was a broken promise to pay. For each collector, it keeps you on top of where you left off when you're taking notes. Again, in Anytime Collect, we allow you to keep notes right on each account, and every time that you make a phone call, maybe you send an email, you can take notes right there and it's all saved back to that account. And it's available to anyone in the organization that needs to see it, you know, based on a permissions basis. And then finally, it increases your customer retention. So when your customer doesn't have to keep repeating themselves to you over and over again, and you're on top of stuff, and it's a quick and easy phone call, it's not painful for them, they're going to take note of that, and it's going to help keep your customers around because it's not a frustrating process for them just to make a payment. So besides doing, handwritten notes, or, notes in documents, you can also record and transcribe these collection calls. By doing this, you're eliminating the excuse for non-payment and you're holding the customer accountable because you have a recording of them saying they were going to make a payment. You have a transcription saying they were going to make a payment, and if they try and tell you that they never did or that they don't remember that, you have the documentation to back it up. It allows for better insight from management. So maybe this is an onboarding situation and you have new people coming into your collections team, and you have a collector that maybe has been there for in your company for a really long time and they do a really great job and you're really happy with their performance. You can give these new collectors recordings and transcriptions of collection calls that they have completed and have them study them, have them look at them, have them use them as collection call scripts. So that you can onboard everyone and make sure that they're all on the same page, that they know how they should be doing their collection calls. It allows for improvement among the collection team. Again, similar situation, maybe it's not a new team member that's coming on board, but you want all of your entire collection team to be on the same page, and you have a collector that maybe does a really good job with a certain type of collection call. You can share these recordings and transcriptions with them to keep them all on the same page. Again, just training purposes. Or maybe you're even going through and you're going to check the transcriptions of your collection calls with your customers, and you can go through and offer tips and improvement for your collections team based on the collection calls that you know that they're already having. And doing these recordings and transcriptions is available in Anytime Collect. When a customer makes a phone call, if your collector is making that outbound phone call to a customer, or if your customer is calling in, it automatically recognizes the account, and all of your collection calls will be recorded and transcribed back to the account of the customer. I do see that we have a hand raised. Once we get through these call scripts, then I'll open up the conversation to everyone and we can ask questions. So here are the collection call scripts, and I will be sending out a recording of this webinar and the PowerPoint so that you can go back and look at these call scripts at the end and maybe even use them in your collections process. So don't worry if you don't worry about trying to write this down or anything. We will send this out to you. So in this collection call script, we give a scenario where the collector calls and lets them know that they're past due, and the customer simply says that they didn't receive the invoice. The big thing on this call script is that you have two options. You can say that, making sure that they've received the order, that there's no type of dispute on it, or you can send them an email with the invoice attached right away. And while you're on the phone with them, you can say, hey, can you check your email? Make sure that they got the email. Have them say to you verbally, I received the email. Because if they didn't, then you can make sure that your emails aren't going to junk, make sure that you have the right email, and you can get all those logistics straightened out before you get off the phone with them. You have them on the phone, you can get a verbal response saying that they did receive that invoice, and then this can't be an excuse in the future. In the second scenario, the customer is saying that the price on the invoice doesn't match their PO, so we have a dispute on it. You can ask the customer to correct the purchase order, or you can, in this scenario, you can fax over a copy of the pricing agreement and the invoice. Again, it's getting them directly the invoice sent to them immediately, and asking them to pay the amount that they're not disputing in the meantime. So it's getting them to take an action immediately, getting them to give you something in the meantime instead of ignoring the payment altogether. And it's getting the invoice again in front of them right away instead of putting it off and having the same conversation over again, a week later. In the third call script, this is a pretty common scenario. They need approval before they can make a payment, and the person that's giving the approval isn't in the office. If you really need that payment and you don't want to wait on them, maybe they've used this excuse before, kind of call them out on their bluff, or kind of put them under a sense of urgency, and ask them for the boss's direct number. Call the boss directly and leave a message, so that they're aware and the person that you've been working with can't forget to go and get the boss to sign that paper, and it doesn't just kind of get swept under the rug. Or contact the salesperson. Don't forget that the salespeople are on your side. They make commission off of this sale, and they want to keep this customer. So go to your sales department. Ask the sales department to step in, get the person who signed the original purchase order involved. Use your sales department as leverage in these cases, and sometimes they have an even better relationship with the customer than you do, because they had to really woo the customer into becoming a part of your company, and so they might be able to leverage some relationships that they were able to build in that case. And then finally, this might be one that you hear now and again, is that they're in a cash crunch and they don't know when they will be able to pay it. In this situation, there's two things that you can do. I'm sorry to hear that, but I have to report to my boss or supervisor this afternoon and let them know your intentions. So let's come to an agreement on payment for this balance. Otherwise, I have to escalate the account out of my hands. The other option is, again, trying to get to some sort of agreement. Can you send a partial payment towards the invoice today? And then we can work together to get the remaining payments from there. In both of these situations, you're giving them another option so that you're still able to receive payment in some form. You're not losing out on the 100% of the invoice. You're getting something today, and then you can work on getting the rest tomorrow. And at least you're creating some type of cash flow in the meantime. So that was all that we had for our webinar today, but we will open it up for questions. Feel free to ask any questions, whether that has to do with the topics that we discussed today, or if you have any questions about automating accounts receivable or anytime collect. Right now, I'm sending out a poll while we wait to see if some of these questions are going to come in. And please feel free to fill out that poll. I did see that we had a hand raised. If you want to put your question in the chat box or in the Q&A box, please let me know. And as a reminder, again, we will be sending out a recording of this, and we will be sending out the PowerPoint. So you will have those call scripts available to you. We do these coffee break webinars once a month. We have a ton of different topics that we go over. We've done how to craft the best email subject lines to get people to open the email and pay on the invoice. We've done topics like the psychology of accounts receivable and kind of going through what your customers are thinking psychologically on why they're not making payments and how you can combat that. A ton of really great topics. So if you go and check out our events page on the AnytimeCollect.com website, you'll be able to sign up for more webinars there. All right. We don't have any questions coming in, so I'll let you all go. We're right up against our time slot for these 20-minute webinars. We really appreciate you guys coming. I hope you all learned something, and hope to see you next month on our next coffee break webinar. Thanks.